last video I made regarding the whole Alex Mauer Star Mazer DSP event was released on July 1st, 2017. It's been 5 months and change since then, and a whole lot of stuff has happened. I briefly considered putting out update videos in the situation as it developed, but I really didn't want my upload feed to be completely filled with twice daily 2-minute videos saying that Alex Mauer had filed yet another DMCA or something. So I decided to wait until there was enough substance for an actual full indie-fensible on the topic. This video will be divided up into 3 subsections: Alex Mauer's actions since my last video, the court case between Alex Mauer and Imagos Softworks, the owner of Star Mazer DSP, and the aftermath of the trial. For those of you who don't know the story, Alex Mauer is a composer of video game music. She's a talented artist with an extensive career. She was hired to do the music for the game Star Mazer DSP, made by Imagos Softworks. There was a contractual dispute between Alex and Imagos. She basically claimed she wasn't paid for her work. Imagos disputed that position. She also claimed that the work was for Star Mazer, not Star Mazer DSP, and therefore was covered under a different contract, while Imagos held the position that her work was not for Star Mazer the game, but Star Mazer the franchise, which would include both the original Star Mazer and Star Mazer DSP. Rather than file for breach of contract against Imagos, Alex instead decided to start filing DMCAs against YouTubers playing Star Mazer DSP, claiming that because she wasn't paid for her work, she retained all copyrights to the game's music. And when YouTubers contacted her about those DMCAs, she tried to conscript them in her public relations fight against Imagos, stating that if they wanted their videos back, the affected YouTubers would need to put pressure on Imagos to pay her the money she considered due to her. Of course, this backfired in her face, and in retaliation, Alex began issuing DMCAs for multiple other games she had worked on. This eventually culminated in Alex getting put into a mental institution and the DMCAs getting dropped. Just so we're clear, this is a very brief rundown of events. I'd recommend you watch my previous indie-fensible and Dumping with Scrump episodes on the subject to learn the details. But this brings us to the point that my previous videos left off on. After securing her release from the institution, she continued to DMCA YouTube videos, violating both her word and legal agreements stating that she would stop. She also began to issue DMCAs to Steam in an attempt to force Valve to stop selling the games, and even went so far as to send a cease and desist letter to Turner Broadcasting. Games affected not only included Star Mazer DSP, but also a number of other indie titles, the most high profile of the bunch being Duck Game and River City Ransom Underground. This was all very well documented, with Sid Alpha putting up a new 5-minute video every time Alex Mauer did so much as take a shit. Hey, whatever pulls in the views, bro. Even as legal action began and restraining orders were served, Alex continued to file DMCAs, make death threats against herself and everybody else, and basically self-destruct her entire career. Alex managed to hurt a lot of people in the short term, but she'll never recover from this. After going down in a blaze of glory, who in their right mind would take a chance on working with Alex Mauer? I had a few lengthy private message sessions with Alex myself. When we talked about her dispute with Imagos, she maintained a specific and consistent position, that she wasn't paid for the work she did, that Don Thacker, the owner of Imagos Softworks, was an all-around shitheel, and that it was completely unbelievable to her that everybody was focusing on her DMCAs rather than what she considered to be the true injustice, her not getting paid. She went so far as to insult my and others' journalistic integrity for discussing her actions and not Imagos' actions. And we will discuss Imagos later in this video, but I want to make something clear right now. I'm not a journalist. I'm a shitlord with a mic. I do my best to be objective, but I won't let somebody like Alex dictate to me what my channel covers and when. And no, getting petty and comparing my view count to Total Biscuits won't convince me either, Alex. I don't need external validation to know that for all of my flaws, I still know how to answer this question.
Are traps gay?
What?
Are traps gay? No, genuine question.
But that's not all we talked about. Alex and I also discussed why she was attacking YouTubers and whether or not she would continue stopping. And it's in these conversations that I think I got to know what type of person she is. For example, she's a trans person, and she said that anytime someone misgenders me or violates my privacy by showing pictures of me as the wrong gender, they are shitting on my effort to gender transition. She said that she had no desire to continue her career as a composer, and therefore had no problem torpedoing it if it means taking other people down with her. She talked about being a victim of sexual assault, and while I won't go into the details, she brought it up in such a way as to say that her past victimhood made her blameless for her current actions. She spent a lot of time acting like she was in the news, even as the story faded and people moved on. She routinely gave me suggestions on how to make her meaningless statements and threats more newsworthy, and threatened to withhold the next bundle of meaningless info if I didn't cover things the way she preferred, or at one point if I continued to refuse to call myself a journalist. And finally, months later, when absolutely nobody gave a shit about her anymore, and after she had blocked and unblocked me about 3 times, she PM'd me out of the blue to ask to talk because everybody else had been boring her. I told her that not all human interaction existed solely to entertain her, and the only reply I got was a smiley face. I'm bringing all of this up in an attempt to show who Alex Mauer actually is. From my point of view, Alex appears to be some kind of borderline narcissistic sociopath. She doesn't care about the damage she causes to other people. She uses anything she can get her hands on as a shield for all of her wrongdoings. She has no problem with using people, or at least attempting to use them, with flawed carrot or stick methods. Flawed because she doesn't understand that her priorities are not the same as other people's priorities. I don't know why Alex is the way she is. Maybe it was the sexual assault, maybe it was the fact that she began transitioning in her 30s, and therefore probably has a low chance of successfully passing or living as her gender of choice. Maybe it's the depression drug she stopped taking, or maybe it's the female hormones fucking with a body that has been male for a significant amount of time after puberty's ended. But regardless of the reason, in my opinion, Alex is a heavily damaged, self-destructive individual that completely lacks empathy for other people. But, on the other side of this dispute, the wheels kept turning. Don Thacker had hired Leonard French, the video game copyright attorney, to represent him, and the case against Alex Maurer quickly got underway. And in the months since I've commented on the situation last, the court case itself became a whole other shit show, which would be extensively covered and explained in a series of live streams and videos on Leonard French's channel. Let's go over the timeline of events. On June 25th, Leonard addressed Alex's use of the DMCA as a way to force Imagos to honor their contract with her. Let's listen in.
There was apparently a contract dispute, perhaps she didn't get paid or something like that, and instead of handling that dispute right there at the contract level, instead she began issuing DMCA takedown notices to channels who had used footage recordings of the game of Stargazer DSP and Starmazer and Starmazer DSP. So that's where it starts to get interesting, because you're not allowed to use the DMCA in that way. She's not allowed to issue copyright strikes against channels if she doesn't own copyrights, or if she's just asserting a contract dispute with the producers of the game. Where does DMCA come into this? Well, she claims to own the copyrights, or own the right to use to assert the copyrights in this way. And so several other videos and commentators, and I've also commented on, not offline but off YouTube, that that's not really how this works. She would sort of have to have an explicit copyright assignment, and every piece of evidence that I've seen so far says that she does not have a copyright, and instead has assigned her copyright to the company she works for, which is normal. When you work for a company and you create copyrights for them, they own the copyrights. So let's start with the contract dispute. Let me first validate Alex, because I think this is very important to do. Alex is a human person, and if she has a real contract dispute with Imagos Softworks, that sucks. And it's nothing to laugh at, and that's nothing to make light of. And she has all the rights in the world to go after Imagos. So let me start over. I do want to validate Alex as a human person. Contract disputes suck, and the proper remedy for that is to take your other party to court, to either get an attorney and make some demands and hope that they give in, or take them straight to court. What's not proper then is what has happened afterwards. She has apparently asserted copyrights over these works, and then asserted her copyrights to take down Let's Plays and live streamers and I guess other videos that have described, reviewed, whatever, contained her music within the larger, video game work that's being rebroadcast or reproduced. So that's not how copyright works.
I absolutely agree with Leonard here. Everybody has vilified the fuck out of Alex, and maybe with good reason, but those hideous actions have entirely overshadowed another question that nobody seems to be asking. What if Alex had a legitimate claim against Imagos? Everybody's assuming that she simply has no legitimate claim because she's behaved so poorly, when that is not necessarily the case. But it is her poor behavior that has overshadowed that claim, and it certainly was not the best legal way to go about getting her money. On July 7th, Leonard filed the claim on behalf of Imagos against Alex. There's nothing really of note here, though this preamble is pretty interesting.
Don Thacker is an artist with a dream he's had since he was 9 years old. A dream of creating a retro shooter video game franchise he calls Starmazer. In January of 2015, Don's company Imagos Softworks began a successful crowdfunding campaign, raising $193,566 to help fund development of the game. Don's dream was coming true.
$193,566 from crowdfunding, eh? That's a pretty hefty chunk of change. Well done, Don. Let's just keep that figure in our back pocket though for later. Also, maybe this is me and my ignorance of court proceedings showing, but does the prosaic of a filing always sound like a poorly written youth novella? As it turns out, Alex actually got herself a lawyer, a Mr. Frank Mazzio. Mazzio, being new to the case, requested that the court give him a week to prepare. On July 13th, 2017, the court ordered that Alex would stop all DMCAs while the case proceeds, and that they would return on July 19th to discuss a temporary restraining order being placed on Alex. Mazzio got the 1 week he asked for, but it turned out to be for nothing because about half an hour after the hearing, Alex fired him. Why? Well, let's take a look at the text messages sent between Alex and Mazzio around this time. Mazzio: Alex, I just tried calling you. I think we need to discuss this further. If you really do want me to discuss it with your dad instead, please send me his telephone number, thank you. Alex: as far as I'm concerned, you're fired. Mazzio: I'm just trying to do what's best for you. This was a stressful morning. Let's talk this afternoon. Alex: are you harassing me now? If you keep not responding to your own client, I will add that to the next complaint to the judge. Why are you sending me a formal letter instead of just texting me this shit? What is this, the 1800s? I have an excuse for handwriting mine. What's your excuse for today? There's no coming back from the public knowing you misgendered me today. My stance has been extremely firm on this against Leonard this whole fucking time and you undermined it. Formally resign now. So yeah, I know these screen caps are obviously not the whole picture, but it would seem that Alex fired Mazzio and went on to harass him by text and phone call because he misgendered her. Which sounds absurd, but she also quickly hired and fired another lawyer back in March, Corey Shackelford, for similar reasons. And she also doxed the judge of her case. I'll just let this one speak for itself. In any case, Alex would go on to violate the temporary restraining order with continued DMCAs, discussions with YouTubers she hoped would cover her side of the story, and continued tweets and pics of random shit related to the case. Doing all of this must have taken up a lot of time, because she missed the deadline to reply to Leonard's complaint in court by 2 days. But the complaint eventually did come in, and it's worth listening to Leonard read it out.
Alex worked for Don in 2015 and part of 2016 writing music for a video game called Star Mazer. It says that she was supposed to be a partner in the company, but Don never produced the contract that would have made the arrangement legal. Instead, Alex worked under a contract that was a film crew form in which Alex was a freelance contractor. Alex was supposed to be the music composer and she did that. In fact, she was constantly ahead of the rest of the development team, so that she was given other tasks mostly involving appearing on an online TV show to promote the game. As Alex has stage anxiety, this was great stress. Alex also moved to Seattle at the behest of Don Thacker. Shortly after Alex was there, the publisher for the game backed out of the deal and Alex became extremely anxious as Don was having trouble paying members of the team. Alex suffered panic attacks and moved back home to PA. Alex and other team members tried to advise Don that the game was too complicated, and eventually it was apparent that the game Star Mazer was running into problems. So Don decided to make a new game. DSP. This game could raise money for further development of Star Mazer. By the time Alex started working on the DSP contract for work on Star Mazer, started working on DSP, the contract for work on Star Mazer was expired. Alex asked for a new contract several times, but Don never produced a new contract. She then goes on to make some bullet points here. The original contract was never fulfilled, inasmuch as Alex was not paid in full for the amount of work that she did. Alex contends that Imagos owes her $9,000. Alex waited for nearly a year while being promised more pay, then asked for her music to be removed from the game DSP, which was done. Alex tried to communicate with Don and his attorney, but was given no response for 2 months. Out of frustration, Alex warned that she would take down videos from the internet with her music from DSP on them. There was no response. Eventually, Alex took down videos with DSP music on them. There was no response at first, but then Don's attorney, Mr. French, began making YouTube videos about Alex, and there was a sudden outburst of hate mail directed at Alex. Defendant asks that Mr. French cease and desist from making videos about the defendant, as this was resulting in hate mail being sent to defendant.
Let's trim all the fat from this document, because it actually does have a nugget of value amidst all the whining. Alex contends that Imagos owes her $9,000 for work she performed under contract, and that Don Thacker was having problems paying not only her, but all members of his staff. This is important to note too, for later. And let's also note, for good measure, that in the same video Leonard confirms that yes, Don was having some problems paying people.
You're going to hear me using equivocating language because I don't want to affirm anything that she's saying here without first going through my legal research. So, but I am going to deny a bunch of it. Shortly after Alex was there, the publisher backed out, and Alex became extremely anxious as Don was having trouble paying members of the team. These are sort of out of order. Don started having trouble paying members of the team after Alex began asserting ownership of the game and literally calling and emailing and writing and telling people that she owned the game. This began privately, more privately, a year or more ago, not just this summer when she started saying things publicly. These problems began occurring a long time ago, and the publisher actually backed out later, not earlier in the chronology of things. And the having trouble paying people was as a direct result of Alex and some of her things that she was saying. Yes, it's possible that there were some normal business delays in paying people or something. I don't really know what the timing was. If there were, is it possible that Imagos sent Alex a check a little bit late? Yes, it's possible. And if that's a big problem, she has remedies to bring all of that up.
There's a lot of legal back and forth that happened from the beginning of fall onward, a lot of it being standard court procedure and inconsequential to this video. What we can take from it is that Leonard didn't really pull any punches, and Alex proved herself to be absolutely inept. On December 1st, Leonard announced that Imagos had won against Alex Maurer, and did a stream with Don Thacker describing the settlement and release. Basically, this whole shit show finally ended because Alex Maurer had essentially agreed to Leonard's terms, which were as follows. Alex Maurer hereby forever releases Imagos from any claim, including but not limited to copyright claims, that she has or had on any and all intellectual property, including but not limited to Starmazer, Starmazer DSP, Motivational Growth, Beelzebuds, Melissa A Game of Choice, Duck Game, Tumblestone, Sizzlefist, Potato Man Seeks the Truth, Jazz Punk, Legend of Dungeon, and Legend of Party. Both parties also release each other from any general claims they have against each other. Alex also agrees not to disparage Imagos any further or file any future claims against them. So there, that sounds like a done deal, right? Well, maybe not. After Alex signed the settlement and the court entered the order of dismissal, this was Alex's reaction. Wow, I'm shocked. Just because I have no interest in defending myself doesn't mean I thought the judge wasn't smart. I thought the judge would shoot down the settlement for obvious reasons. It's hilarious to me that this is happening. The judge looks like an idiot. Ha ha ha. Apparently Alex thought that when she declined to defend herself, that the judge should have stepped in and done it for her. The whole obvious reasons thing you're talking about, Alex, that's part of defending yourself. And you need to make these reasons clear to the judge as part of your defense. Not simply say, well, no, you figure it out. No, man. Do your own legwork. You've got to make your own case. This really feels like the classic SJW response of, I don't need to educate you, shitlord, and I'm very happy to see it finally get shot down in a legal setting. Alex didn't like this, though, and kept emailing and calling the judge about it, to the point that the judge had to file this order. Pending further order from this court, the party shall only communicate with the court and its staff through documents filed with the clerk of court. What this basically means is that despite Alex Maurer going on about how she's been harassed and how terrible it is, she has actually begun harassing the judge personally through his private contact info. If you ever had any sympathy for Alex's situation, I expect it has long since evaporated by now. Mine sure has. So, that brings us up to speed on the actions of Alex Maurer and Leonard French and the court up until now. If Alex continues to act out, here's how I predict it will go. She will continue to not give a shit and file DMCAs or make disparaging remarks in public, regardless of any restraining orders placed on her or agreements she has signed, and because she has no money to garnish damages from, eventually she will be put in jail for her actions. Or maybe she'll just move on with her life. Either way, it seems like any serious involvement from Alex Maurer on this topic has now come to an end. The Imagos story doesn't end there, however, and it's here where you, if you're ethical anyway, have to ask the question I posed earlier in the video. Despite Alex's terrible behavior, did she have a claim against Imagos? Well, legally, if she did, she agreed to release it when she signed that settlement and release. Fine, but did she have a claim before that? Was she actually not paid $9,000 for her work? I mean, at first glance, that's kind of hard to believe. Remember that in the information that Don Thacker provided to Leonard French for his paperwork, it was revealed that Imagos had collected around $193,000 from crowdfunding. Surely there was enough money floating around to pay Alex what she was owed. But also remember that despite all of this money, Don was having some problems paying his staff.
We recently, as a couple of clients, pay/not pay, and with the case going on and everything, I've basically been scraping together dollars to pay employees who work for me.
Is this a point of view that we can corroborate? Well, somebody actually did. His name is Musical Antihero. I initially got to know him due to the Alex Maurer case, actually. I've been on his podcast a few times, and I think he's a pretty good guy. Musical Antihero actually did a lot of the legwork necessary to confirm and deny a lot of facts, by conducting both email and phone interviews with various former employees of Imagos. He then compiled his evidence and put out a 20-minute video on the subject. But you won't find that 20-minute video on the internet anymore, because he took it down. Well, why did he take it down? Because after it went live, Musical Antihero received the following messages from multiple people. God, I hope Maurer finds and kills you. Can see why your ex-fiancé slept with 10 other fags, you fucking backstabber. Fuck off and die, you piece of shit. You just ruined the Maurer case. Can't wait to piss on your grave. What you fucking did to Don? I can't believe it. You're worse than Cuck Alpha and Total Bitch Kit. Gonna skullfuck your corpse too. Worthless fag. Should tie you to the bumper like Cuckboy Maurer. There was apparently more, but Musical Antihero didn't have the screen caps of those as they had occurred on Discord, not Twitter, and he was no longer in the relevant Discord servers. But I'll read to you his message to me describing what happened to him. LOL, well, after the video went up, things were pretty alright for a few hours. Some nice discussion was had, and generally people wanted to ask questions. About 2 or 3 hours later, it hit the Lawful Masses Discord channel, and that's about when all hell broke loose. While Leonard seemed a little off-put but generally calm, his community was not. Got a ton of harassing messages from that, as well as in a few private Warcraft community discords I was in. Things also started popping up on Twitter afterwards in my DMs. In an effort to stymie things, I left the communities that harassment was coming from and tried to just get off Twitter. Later, another game dev would clarify a few points from the video, who made quite a few assumptions about a source, and Don apparently jumped down his throat and labeled him as malicious, confusing him with the original colleague who had passed the story on to me. That I've got screenshots of kicking around. And here are these screenshots, apparently from Leonard French's Discord where Don Thacker is addressing all of this. Let's see what Don has to say. Who are all of these ex-employees saying the same thing? Because we've been able to dig up a contractor whose work was not usable and whom we didn't pay because of that, and my ex-girlfriend. I'm gonna step back from this. If you can't be open and honest about what you're saying, there's likely something wrong with it. Why would people need to secretly talk about wrongs done to them? Why would my ex need her voice changed for a video? Leonard and I will provide, openly, everything we have to be as transparent as possible. Early in the year, when Alex was on her tier, she sent a bunch of emails to news outlets trying to prove some kind of conspiracy. She had a list she'd obtained, likely from my ex, of people my film company owed money to. She included 15 people, and only one of them actually responded. Also my ex, though she asked to remain anonymous. Another claim made in this package was that everyone quit and everyone hates me or something. I confronted the members of the team with this and have, in writing, their positive responses. None of them has done or said anything Alex has claimed outside of Alex's fictional report. Only my ex who, when confronted, told me that she was just trying to get Alex to stop talking to her and told me that she feared for my safety. There is no story here. I ran a business poorly and fucked up a lot in pursuing a dream with friends. There were the types of tensions you get from starting an enterprise with people, and those were compounded with me breaking up with someone and entering into another relationship while that person was still on the team. The only sensational thing about our course is that Alex did what she did. Everything else is, as I've been told by fellow devs, pretty standard. There was a guy who was going to get to the bottom of this with this amazing package of news he was given by Alex, and he started interviewing people. Only 2 responded, the same 2 as before. He talked to Leonard and eventually I called him, because he had not asked our side at all. He apologized when presented with the evidence and stepped away. This is who I thought Sharky was. However, from numerous side conversations I'm having just now, the contents of which are all being sent to Leonard, I was wrong. Sharky is someone with an interest to be destructive, whose motives I can't imagine. I just tried to make a fucking game with my friends. What the actual hell is wrong with people? Why does there need to be some secret Kabbalistic conspiracy? Well, holy shit. It's pretty clear that Musical Antihero's video, whatever it was, hit quite a few nerves. Not only Don's, but Leonard's community as a whole. The heat that all these people brought down on Musical Antihero for the video was ultimately what made him take it down, by his own words. Don himself seems to be denying the factual validity of the contents of that video as well. Let's see if I can clear anything up with my own sleuthing. This Sharky guy that Don mentions is another game dev in Leonard's Discord, and he's the one who took these Discord screen caps. Don initially thought him to be that old interviewer he mentioned, but quickly changed his tune and said that his interest was destructive, because he was the friend of Musical Antihero who, earlier in the conversation, was discussing and clarifying points from that video. Classy. And who was that old interviewer that Don thought Sharky was, anyway? Well, I asked Musical Antihero if he happened to know, and he did tell me who it was, but he specifically stated that it has to remain between us. It's someone that I know, and I'm going to respect his wishes to remain anonymous. This friend decided to not get involved after speaking with Don, and deleted all of his findings on the topic. Why would this mutual friend of ours do this? If only we knew what was in this now lost video, it might shed some light onto what's going on here. Well, would you look at that. I just so happen to have a copy of that missing video. It's amazing what never leaves the internet. Let's take a peek at what musical antihero had to say about Don Thacker, what got everybody so riled up.
So a couple weeks ago, I was working with a colleague of mine who, prior to the Alex Maurer situation getting picked up, was working very closely with several other YouTubers and several other news media outlets on covering a portion of this. Specifically, he was looking into goings-on that were happening at Imagos Softworks and why things were blowing up as they were. After completing his findings, he went to the CEO of the company, Don Thacker, with several questions relating to incidents going on, some of which we're going to discuss in this video today. At that time, he was threatened with legal action if he didn't drop the story and reveal his sources. This is not the only time it's happened, where the narrative has been curved with threats.
This seems to me to refer to that mutual friend of ours who wanted to remain anonymous after talking to Don Thacker. Don claimed that the anonymous friend stated he was going to get to the bottom of this, but ultimately apologized to Don and dropped his investigation when Don gave him additional evidence. However, that's not the story that I'm hearing. What this mutual friend told me himself is that Don threatened him with a subpoena if he didn't stop looking into the claims, and additionally give his sources up to Don because apparently they had all signed NDAs. Just to clarify, Don, threatening somebody with legal action is not the same as convincing them that your side is right with additional evidence. Allow me to describe to you, as briefly as possible, how I understand the timeline of events to be, taken from the information within Musical Antihero's missing video. After this outline, I will provide evidence for each major point using interviews from former Imagos employees. What it seems like is that if Alex Maurer is owed anything at all, it's to the tune of $4,000, not the $9,000 she asked for in court. But it's also not clear, as we get into some of these testimonies from Imagos employees, that Alex is not the only person who is owed a paycheck from Don Thacker, with some of these paychecks reaching the 5-figure mark. These people will likely never see their money, as Imagos now only consists of 2 employees, Don Thacker and his current girlfriend, Lindsay. Everybody else has been let go. So, let's follow the money. In February of 2015, Star Mazer's Kickstarter goes up. Around this time, Imagos begins hiring people to work on the project. A few of them, like Cast Pixel, don't stay very long, as it's clear they're not going to be getting paid, and frankly, if you're smart, you demand at least a bit of money up front before handing over the final product. And as we know from both Kickstarter's page and court documents, the money raised was around $194,000. Additionally, Star Mazer had multiple publishers, which provided financial backing for the project throughout their tenure. Adult Swim Games was on board until about mid-2016, when an ownership dispute arose. Adult Swim Games had agreed to fund the game Star Mazer, but Imagos released a game called Star Mazer DSP, which is a different project. Neither project's ownership was ever negotiated with Adult Swim Games, but it was made clear that Adult Swim Games was specifically funding Star Mazer's development. So when DSP came out, and it became obvious that the money that Adult Swim Games had provided to Don Thacker was being used to develop a different game than the one they signed on to publish, they abandoned the project. Afterward, a second publisher came on, Playism, offering a monthly stipend, but the Imagos employees were unable to keep up with Playism's demands, and they subsequently dropped the project as well. Star Mazer's final budget, if we total up the Kickstarter money, the publisher money, and a few independent backers, was just above $400,000. I mean, $400,000 is a lot of money, but not necessarily for game development. Games can be an expensive business, but we're talking about an indie company making a pixel space shooter. Surely $400,000 would be enough to cover people's paychecks for the level of work and amount of time we're talking about here. So where did the money go? Well, I'd ask Don himself, but he seems to be gone on vacation so much I can't even get a hold of him. Why? Here's a pic from his Instagram taken in Alaska in July 2015. And just 2 months later, in September 2015, he's in Vancouver at the Pacific National Exhibition. And again, in December of 2015, visiting all the various filming locations of the original RoboCop movie in Detroit. I guess Vancouver really spoke to him, really called to him on a deep personal level, because he's back there again in February of 2016. And here he is again at the coast in Oregon in May 2016. A little, romantic private retreat. But I guess all this nature has really had him craving the nightlife, because on July 3rd, 2016, he went to go see Arm Cannon perform live. All these locations in North America just aren't exotic enough. Where in the world is Don Thacker next? Well, how about Târgu Mureș, Romania, in August 2016, just 2 months later. And to wash that all down, how about we hit up the Cedar Point theme park in Ohio in October 2016?
I've basically been scraping together dollars.
Wow, he managed to do all of this while still developing Star Mazer, and even while publishers were abandoning the project. What an incredible guy. I just wish I could catch up with him to ask him where all the development money went. I would like to take this opportunity to make something clear. Imagos Softworks, as a company, doesn't actually exist. The company is Imagos Films, and they specialize in short films and commercials.
We've done a bunch of film stuff to kind of keep our doors open and food on our plates and stuff, and that film stuff has all been really well received. Two of them didn't pay us yet, and I'm kind of in a hole on that, but other than that, lots of cool stuff. And by the way, none of those were like Devolver or anything. You don't speculate.
Oh yeah, the E3 Devolver Digital thing. I remember watching that on my stream. I remember it sucking.
You want your fucking trigger warning, Naomi?
I do. For fuck's sakes.
But hey, Don Thacker's been doing the indie film thing for a while, but he's always really wanted to make video games. So he began his project under the name Imagos Softworks, but that never really existed beyond a label Don slapped on the project. It was always Imagos Films, and when people donated money to what they believed were the development of Imagos Softworks made games, that money probably went to go fund Imagos Films movies. And Don hoped to make enough money back from those movies to fund his game projects. At least, that's the best case scenario regarding where all the money went. Anyway, after Alex Mauer's DMCA's hit, Imagos is suddenly empty. All employees, save Don and his girl, both temporary and full-time, no longer work for Imagos. And none of them have contracts, with the sole exception of Alex Mauer. So question 1. What's the deal with Imagos? Well, it's pretty safe to say that Imagos had some problems with management, and not only regarding people not getting paid. You don't bleed out 2 publishers that quickly, not when investments are on the line. And in the case of Adult Swim Games, not because you take the publisher's money and shuffle it around internally to fund a different project. And that's not to mention the revolving door of new hires and new fires at Imagos, which is also not a good sign either, for both the morale of the team or the competence of the people in charge. Question 2. Is Alex Mauer actually owed any money? In my opinion, there's a pretty good chance she is, because almost everybody else who worked for Imagos are also still owed money. People who were hired during the Kickstarter, people who worked while the publishers were backing the project, people who even continued to work right up until Alex dropped her bomb, are all owed money. I mean, Alex's conduct since then has pretty much destroyed any chance of her getting paid. But is she owed? The possibility is there. There's no paperwork. No contracts, with the exception of Alex. There's evidence of money going missing, but there's no evidence of where this money went, or who is owed what. And if people are owed something, it's going to be extremely difficult for these people to get paid even if they force the issue legally. The only person we can trust regarding what money went where is Don Thacker. Do you trust him? Question 3. What has Imagos Softworks actually produced out of all of this mess? We have one game with an unknown completion status, Star Mazer. We have a game that nobody paid for and yet seemed to have been made anyway, Star Mazer DSP. We have both massive financial losses for publishers and a messy, ugly legal battle between Imagos, a company we cannot trust, and Alex Mauer, a person with a long history of mental instability. This is Don Thacker's legacy. Now that you know my take on the full situation, allow me to present you with the evidence that brought me to this conclusion. You may feel free, of course, to judge it for yourself.
I talked to multiple sources within Imagos Films and Imagos Softworks, as well as outside, in putting this video together over the course of the last month. Some people were very eager to discuss things. Others, decidedly less so. However, most decidedly wish to remain anonymous, almost unanimously for the fear of interpersonal conflict and legal suits. As such, a lot of the information I'm going to put out here on the screen today, I'm going to redact in order to protect identities, job titles, and specific dates in time. Furthermore, over the course of this video, I'm going to be citing a phone interview I had with a higher up at Imagos Softworks. I will be altering that interview, so in an effort to protect my source's identity.
I'm going to be following Musical Antihero's lead on this one. He made the deals with these former employees for them to remain anonymous, and he gave me all of his research under the condition that I uphold these deals. I understand the main problem with using anonymous sources. It's very easy to assume that I'm just making everything up, or for Don to say that the entire thing is just a slanderous lie or something. I am simply asking you for your trust that what I'm doing is on the level. That yes, I have seen the raw data, and I do know who these people are. And I hope that my conduct on this channel up until now has made you comfortable enough to make this leap with me. And if it doesn't, I completely understand. Here's an email interview from anonymous source 1. I was under the Imagos Softworks non-disclosure agreement. It was, as far as I know, only in effect up to 1 year after the last time I was given confidential information from Imagos Softworks. All things said, it doesn't really apply anymore, I don't think. It was, as far as I know, the only contract I ever signed. I was never paid for my work on the game. I worked on it for roughly a year. There was a verbal contract involving percentage of final profits, but nothing was ever signed. While this means I doubt I am owed any money, this also means that Imagos Softworks does not, as far as I know, legally own any of the work I did for the game, some of which was used publicly without compensation to me, this being catchphrases and a trailer I worked on and things of that nature. All of our conversations were for percentages. There was talks of a $5,000 monthly salary, but nothing ever came of that. While an argument might be made that I could be owed some of the profits from Star Mazer DSP, none of my work ended up in that game as far as I know. I know that other members of the team were owed money, didn't have contracts, and were paid much less than they should have been. I heard about this a decent amount while working. Also, a large amount of team members would rotate through the game. Producers and such would come and go at a disturbing rate. While I can't speak to exactly where the money went, I can say that Don was often interested in events such as the PAX concert and hiring a lot of high-profile musicians for the game. Well, high-profile for chiptunes. I don't know if they were paid for their work or not, but it often seemed excessive. As for Don being duplicitous, yes. When I was let go from the project, I had been basically told a $5,000 a month salary would happen. Then I helped the team out at PAX. I pitched the game quite hard at the Adult Swim booth. After this was done for a few meetings, he was distant, and then I got an email from Alex. Alex fired me from the project, as at the time Alex was supposed to be the co-owner of Imagos Softworks, and this was a way to have her be more involved, which was really just because Don tends to be very passive-aggressive. He refused to talk to me in an honest way, and it was very frustrating.
Alex was supposed to be a partner in the company. Yes, denied. Alex was never supposed to be a partner in the company. Maybe Alex had talked about it or something, I don't know, but Dawn has made clear to me that she was never ever meant to be a partner in the company.
Alex fired me from the project, as at the time Alex was supposed to be the co-owner of Imagos Softworks, and this was a way to have her be more involved.
Alex was never supposed to be a partner in the company.
Alex was supposed to be the co-owner of Imagos Softworks.
Alex was never supposed to be a partner in the company.
This whole Alex is a partner thing, it's now corroborated by another person. Leonard, do you want to change your opinion on that?
Denied.
Alright. He would often seem to be out to be angry just to be angry, or fights just for fights. Sometimes popping into meetings with me and another coworker unannounced and giving us pop quizzes. He also tended to push a crunch mentality, which is never great. Now, I want to temper all of this with the fact that Don is, I would say, mostly just a businessman. I think the project got away from him, and he's a passive-aggressive man like many people I've worked with in the industry. Admitting he's wrong or has made a mistake is something he would never do. In fact, he often got very upset at me if I admitted any kind of weakness when pitching the game. I think he'd never made a video game before. Oh, he'd worked on them, but making one and having that kind of budget is hard, and it escaped him. I did also see a pattern of using people and taking advantage of people, but if I said this was singular to Don, I'd be lying. This is very common in both Hollywood and the games industry. Interns and crunch and etc. is all fairly expected, and people put up with it more than they should because it involves the work they love. Here's another email interview from anonymous source 2. I have to censor significant parts of it to protect the identity of the person involved. I believe I did sign a non-disclosure agreement. More of a blanket NDA for all work, Imagos Films and Softworks. This person held an upper management job title that I have to redact. Being sandwiched between the company owner and executive producer and the director, who are the same person, is a conflict of interest and did not allow me to do my job properly. To clarify, when someone in my position has an issue with the director, they would normally take it up the chain. In this case, Don was the entire chain, creating that conflict of interest. I was shoehorned into adhering to his will. I am not owed any money. During my tenure, I personally made sure everyone was paid for their work. There was occasional pushback from Don, who ultimately signed the checks, but everyone was paid in a timely manner. It is no coincidence that my departure and the deterioration of payments coincided with each other. Once Don was in control of the money and didn't have me to hold him accountable, it was his show. He had the power. I cannot speak to this definitively because I've never had full visibility into the company bank account, but I can say that Don did not have another full-time job that I know of. His apartment was quite expensive. He had all the toys, video games, CPU equipment, etc. I am unsure how he paid for everything, but I can guess. He would tell me that he took editing jobs for friends and did make some money on the side, but he also said multiple times that robbing Peter to pay Paul is a thing and is how business works. Again, I wouldn't use these quotes as verbatim, but they are as accurate as my memory allows. I am not out to ruin Don. I want to make that clear. He does mean well. However, he is quite a narcissist and a borderline, if not full-blown, sociopath. He has trouble connecting on an emotional level. Everything is black and white to him. To his credit, he was able to connect with me when I had some issues in my personal life, but it seemed very topical and disingenuous. I credit the effort, but the relationship always felt strained, and to be honest, I could never fully trust him. I left Imagos because I had no clout or authority to do my job. It was strenuous to my relationship, life, and health. I refused to work for him due to the trauma and just general lack of alignment, creatively and logistically. Here's a phone interview from anonymous source number 3. I'm only including the relevant parts of the interview, and this may get a bit long.
So I originally wanted to reach out to you about some concerns I'd had. I was talking with a colleague who brought up that before this whole thing blew up with the current litigation and all the DMCAs before that, that he was looking into reports that employees of Imagos Films and Softworks that were working on Star Mazer, it wasn't just the current defendant of the ongoing litigation that had been unpaid for work. In fact, there were several people that had been significantly underpaid for work.
Yes. Literally anyone who says to you they are owed money is owed money. It ranges from a couple $100 here and there to hundreds of thousands of dollars, depending on who you're talking to. Let's see. I personally was unpaid for a lot of my work, and I was criticized pretty heavily when 1 month I kind of started letting it slip a couple days, and then said, hey, I really need to get paid, and I was told it was my turn to not get paid. I did get paid for the month after, and then nobody got paid anymore from last January. Yeah, we were all paid in December. January, no one got paid anymore, and that's when the Star Mazer team left. So I think literally there's only like 2 people working on Star Mazer right now, which is Don Thacker and Lindsay.
The team left. Okay. Now, January is when the first DMCA claim came in against Star Mazer DSP on Steam. Can you clarify what you mean by what the team left?
So, so Alex is a little bit different. That story is a little bit separate from everyone else's experience. Essentially, Alex has a lot of mental issues. It wasn't always that way though. Like, he was always a little introverted, but he's a really intelligent guy, and he had worked really, really hard and moved out to Seattle, and things started falling apart. He got really paranoid, and he got really frustrated with Don, because Don doesn't like paying people, and if you ask him to pay you, then he'll freak out at you, and that's really hard when you're really slaving away at something. And Alex had done a ton of work, and he's been forcing himself to be an extrovert when he's very much an introvert. He got really, really upset because he was like, hey man, I really need to get paid. And part of that was he left because he had medical issues for a little bit. He was like, I'm going to be gone for a little bit, and then that became longer and longer, and then he wanted back pay, and he wanted pay for the time he wasn't working, I believe. So it became very tough because there just wasn't money for him at that stage, for whatever reason. And so Alex got very, very upset and wanted the rest of us, everyone else who was left on the team at that point, he wanted us to kind of join in this lawsuit because we were all missing pay from various points. But Don doesn't like having people sign contracts. So I straight up told him, number one, I have no position to stand in. I put myself in a terrible spot. So I was like, well, screw it. I won't get paid a bunch, and I'll, work really hard, and maybe it'll pan out, maybe it won't. I won't bother signing contracts. Because that's what happens sometimes when you are trying to work with a friend on a project. So none of us were really interested in suing Don with him, and he got and more frustrated. He got kind of more bitter about it, and he kind of lost himself in his own little world, and he was striking out and lashing out. And I think the fact that we weren't supporting him made him try and find outside sources to support him, which is when he started approaching other musicians who he wanted to kind of back him up, and then other people on the internet, and then finally it ended up with, you know, all these people who had represented his work in some form on YouTube. I'm sorry, her work. Jeez, sorry. Like the last time I saw Alex was a male, so it's a little confusing.
No, I understand. I totally understand.
Alex, his grievance became a very separate grievance from everyone else's grievance. So, in that, he has a very legitimate point, and that point is that he wasn't getting paid for his work, and it spun into him wanting his work back, which is not possible because he signed it away. But honestly, he probably wasn't paid for most of it. We're all owed a lot of money, and some of it was straight up borrowed from us. I know Cosmo is owed about $10,000, I think. I'm owed straight up $10,000 plus unpaid amounts of money that it's like an extra 20-something thousand. I calculated it at one point. You know, it's just hard because we're talking about a game that was funded multiple times through Kickstarter and the people behind Kickstarter, through Adult Swim Games, through Playism, and I don't know who they have at this point because I'm not with them anymore. But it's hard that all those people were paying what should have equated to everyone's monthly salary, and people just weren't being paid. And it was very sporadic, and sometimes people were paid, and sometimes people got 3 months worth of money all at once, and that, you know, they had to learn to trust that it was going to come again. It's really hard for people who are on the outside of the situation to understand the gravity of the situation, because Don is an incredibly charismatic individual who can make people believe that he is the key to unlocking their dreams and their future goals, and he's like the nicest guy in the world, and he's funny, and he's smart, but underneath is a very not a very different, very opposite human being. That it's very Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde kind of situation, where the people who've been on the team and been close to him have seen the flip turnaround where he's screaming at the top of his lungs at you and telling you you're worthless and didn't contribute anything, so you don't deserve any money. We all worked very, very hard on this, and in the end we all had to say goodbye, and the only person that's left is the person who basically swindled a bunch of money, and the person who he's now dating and brought on because he wants her near him. So it's very, very hard. And a lot of us have just kind of been like, you know what? There's no way to sort the situation out. You know, we're just gonna cut our losses and go. And I think that's probably been the case for everybody. I don't think anybody's even considered going back once if they get another publisher.
So you said Don could almost kind of flip on a dime. Is that something that happened often, or?
For me, it happened daily. For other people, it would happen maybe once a week or once a month. It happened a lot during our stand-up meetings when we were all on video calls together. It would happen, like at PAX. It would happen when he was having one-on-one meals with people. It would just be a very specific situation where he would need to do some kind of control of the situation because somebody was unhappy or weren't paid or whatever the situation is. They feel pressured, they want to leave, or they, want to grow and want something different, and so that would, cause a blow up, and sometimes nothing caused a blow up. So just, I can't think of anybody who didn't experience that on our team, both as part of the team in a department and also as an individual. I think we've each been approached by various news outlets and various individuals who wanted to kind of break a story on why Starmazer it hasn't really gone anywhere, isn't actively being progressed, why people are no longer part of the team, and I think we've all probably spoken out at various points to various people, and usually, the fear of getting sued makes people go, oh, like, actually, I'm not going to pursue this story, or people get convinced by Don that it's not true. Personally, I don't care anymore, because I moved on with my life. I wish Starmazer had come out. It is, like, basically throwing away several years worth of work, and that's hard. So I can see why you probably haven't had a ton of perspective being given to you outside of Don, and I don't know who else you talked to, if it's just been people who are on his team, or I have no idea. But anyone who was there from the beginning I think we all feel very burnt by the situation, and I can very much see how Alex got to the place that he was, and managed to, and is, with the aid of being slightly mentally ill, well, severely mentally ill at this point, because it was just so much pressure, so much stress, so much emotional turmoil, and that can make somebody snap, especially somebody who is prone to snapping, and it's just unfortunate that he snapped as hard as he did. I know that when he started just being so public and being so aggressive online, I emailed him and it was like, hey, buddy, like, people love you and people care about you and people are genuinely your friends, and I just want to ask you right now to close your laptop and go outside and just whatever happened on here has happened, and just leave it, just walk away and like have your life again. And he responded with, "You're not my friend, fuck you."
Yeah. One thing you mentioned earlier is there was a lot of backing behind it. Of course, I'm aware of the Kickstarter. I'm aware that at one point Imagos Softworks was partnered with, I believe it was Devolver Digital.
We were never with Devolver.
No.
We were with Adult Swim Games, and they gave us at least $50K. It might have been more. I think the long-term goal was to give us additional funds. And I know the kind of the thing that Don told us, the reason why we left Adult Swim Games, which what he said to us was that because we had launched DSP, Adult Swim Games felt very deceived, because we were making another game as the game, and they were like funding one game, and then it was like, well, who's going to own the secondary assets? And so they freaked out and bolted, and then he said that he really felt like they were funneling that money into, I think it was Foxtronauts? Maybe, I'm not quite sure what it is, but it's like some other game that came out that year. But I don't know what it actually was, because I didn't talk to them, so it could be what it was, but it could very much not be what happened. But ultimately we did lose Adult Swim Games as our publisher, and then Don went on like a frantic hunt for a new publisher, and that's when we got Playism. And what Playism was doing was giving us like a monthly stipend.
Okay.
And so that was supposed to get us through X amount of time. And what happened was in last October, we went out to a Tokyo Game Show. We were hanging out with Playism, everything was sweet. And then in November, I think the head of the company started to question our timeline, and there was some miscommunication / deception about how long and how far behind we were, and they thought they were going to get a game in like 4 months from the time. Like they thought they were going to get a game, I think, in April, and we were going to need like another year and a half at least. We were so far behind. We didn't even have really a working build. It was horrifically bad in that like they would have had to pay so much more money for this little indie game. And so the head of the company found out, and in December, they just didn't pay us. and they kind of started shutting down talking to us. And at the time, Don threatened them and told them that he was going to go to the papers and let everyone know that this company was going to refuse to pay this indie team with a lot of heart right before Christmas. And so he threatened them on a phone call, and they are an upstanding Japanese company who you can't really like threaten somebody's reputation in Japan and have it mean the same thing as it means here.
Mm-hmm.
So they kind of they sort of sat down and were like, cool, lawyering up. And they paid us for that month, and that meant since they paid us, we had to deliver or else we lost our game. And we weren't going to be able to deliver that next milestone. So that's when things really crumbled. Don kept telling us, hey, I'm working on it. I can't pay you guys right now, but I'll let you know when they can. I bowed out at that point and was like, I can't work somewhere where I'm not getting paid. And I think pretty shortly after the artist left, but before I left, Cado, our social media guy, and Austin, our programmer, left in November because they had already had enough, and they just wanted to do something else with their time. They really felt like the game wasn't going to come out. They felt like they weren't getting paid, and they were just kind of fed up. So, yeah.
Right. In regards to all this additional funding, the question I've got to ask, just to put it out there, what happened to all of this money? Did it all go into salaries? It all went into production of the game, or is there still a lot unaccounted for?
To answer your question, it's so confusing because Imagos is two companies, right? There's a film company and a game company. And when we got $195,000 from the game community to make this game, we were also in post-production on a film called Depth, which was made for Frictional Games. And Frictional Games had given us, I think it was like $70,000. It wasn't a lot, but it was enough to almost kind of make a feature. And so it wasn't enough though for finishing up post-production. So Don was looking for additional resources, and he found a resource from a guy who's an early investor in Amazon, and he was giving Don an extra $100K to kind of help with that. And so there was that money, and then there was the game money, but the money wasn't coming fast enough from the guy, the investor for the movie. So money went from the Kickstarter fund towards the movie, and then there were other times, because there were lots of commercials that were being made, as well as this film, where other funds would be swapping back and forth. Sometimes game money would go towards the films and video projects, and sometimes the video project money would go back towards the game. And there was I never once saw Don open up an Excel spreadsheet and look at the numbers. I don't think there was any real accounting of how the money is handled. And I think it was just like, hey, so-and-so is asking for $3,000, I guess I'll give them $3,000. Or, hey, so-and-so says they need this, so I guess I'll give them this. Or, hey, I don't actually have any money, so, I'm not going to give them anything, because through them, I don't have it, so it's not going to happen. It became just a chaotic situation as far as funds. I can tell you that Don is extremely generous, and anyone who goes out with him will be fed. The apartment he lived in was about between $3,500 to $4,000 a month, and that was being paid for through, this fund. And in fairness, it was the office as well, so that's totally fine. But new equipment was showing up, video games and systems, and if you ever look at his Instagram feed or his Twitter, you'll see all kinds of vacation pictures all the time, going to theme parks and renting cars and driving across the country. He doesn't have money outside of the money that was given to him. And all the funds he gets from commercial projects he does and film projects usually just barely pay for the project themselves. So, honestly, I cannot say that he is like purposely like mishandling the money for his personal gain, but I can tell you that I don't believe he's tracking it in any sophisticated or even responsible manner.
If you had to take your best guess, what would you say the budget was for the game after that initial crowdfunding plus the two potential publishers?
Oh man, that's a really good question. Like I said, I think we got about 50 from Adult Swim Games, and we got pretty regular stipends. I'm trying to remember how much we got each month from, I wish I could remember. It could have been, God, it could have been 20,000 a month. Well over an additional 100,000 for sure. Probably closer to an additional 200,000 would be my guess, somewhere around there. So you're looking at probably about 400,000 at this point that's been put into this project. I don't believe he's had any additional funding beyond those two bodies. At least, I mean, like I said, I left last January, so I really had my hands out since that point. So I don't know if he's managed to secure any additional backers or funding, but at that time, it was probably around 400K.
Okay. So when did payment begin to stop for members of the Star Mazer development team? We know that Miss Maurer, the defendant of the current litigation, claims that payments stopped in June of last year.
Alex has a different scenario than the rest of us. So, she would have stopped being paid earlier because she had a mental breakdown earlier. So she had a mental breakdown in around Thanksgiving / closer to Christmas of let's see, God, I'm trying to remember dates now. This was 2017, so 2016, so 2015. So in that November period before she started litigation, she had a mental health leave. There was a point in which she did stop getting paid because she stopped producing work. I think the big discrepancy was that she stopped being paid, and I think she felt like she was owed some money at the time in which she stopped being paid, not just for the time in which she felt like she should have been paid and she wasn't working, but on top of that, like, before she stopped, I believe there was some money she was probably owed here and there, because again, the payments are so sporadic. Like, you're talking about somebody who, like, mails a check in the mail, like, when they remember to, and half the time it isn't signed or dated. You know, or it gets quote-unquote lost, or, you know, like, and sometimes you get 3, and sometimes you get 9, so because of that, it's so hard to keep track of your own finances that I can see why she would have been owed some kind of money. But I think the part that I disagree with personally is I really feel that when she stopped working, she really should have stopped being paid, and she felt like she deserved to still be paid for the time in which she wasn't working. And I think there was a lot of pressure for hospital bills, and that's what really fueled her to be like, hey, I need this money. And I think she felt like Don was personally responsible because he was personally responsible for getting her to move out to Seattle and join the team there and pay rent in the same building that he was in. Like I said, he was paying $3,500 to $4,000 per month, and then she would have been paying, even in the cheapest of places in there, it would have been over $1,000 a month off of a very low salary. Plus, he really encouraged her to go to the hospital, and the hospital say, she didn't get insurance through Imagos, so you're talking about somebody who then has a giant hospital bill for a time in which she was encouraged to go and seek help, and then, maybe even follow up medication. And then on top of that, she flew back home and moved home because she couldn't afford the hospital bills and she couldn't afford living in Seattle, and, frankly, mentally was not in a good place to be there anymore. So, I think there was a lot of pressure for her, and she probably felt very bitter and frustrated with Don and felt like it was his fault and he owed her. And, you know, there was points in which they had agreements worked out. I believe she wanted to make a transgender underwear line, and so she had talked to me briefly about putting together a video for her with her. I was going to do it free of charge. Not that I frankly really wasn't paid for the most part, but like I was going to help out, and you know that was going to off balance some of what Alex felt like she was owed. But there are no numbers. There's no way of keeping track of who is owed what. There's no spreadsheet. The fact that Alex had to sign contracts, I honestly thought it was forged at first.
Aside from Miss Maurer, were any of you under contract with Imagos? Any sort of payment plan, non-disclosure agreements, confidentiality?
Yeah, that's such a good question. I don't have any signed NDA outside of what I signed for Imagos Films, and it was good, I think, for 1 year, and I signed it in 2013. I think I had a couple deal memos for the feature film, and that was put together because there was like a production team to do that. I never signed a single piece of paperwork. Personally, I don't think anybody has a contract. I can't say that for sure. You have to check it with them. I sure as hell never did. Don hates signing paperwork. He might have signed like agreements with bands, so that like they had contracts saying that they were participating in it. And because Alex was initially kind of asked to sort of co-run Imagos Softworks with Don, and he was supposed to sort of at various points potentially be the co-owner of it with him, and Don had even wanted him to go down to the bank with him and like sign paperwork together and you know do Washington State business bureau stuff together, but that never happened.
Alex was never supposed to be a partner in the company.
Alex was initially kind of asked to sort of co-run Imagos Softworks.
Was never supposed to be a partner in the company.
Co-run Imagos Softworks.
Denied.
But I can see why Alex may have ended up with a contract. But I don't know that anybody else had one. But I'm just not sure. It's just so hit and miss, and like I said, it's so disorganized. It's like per person, everyone has their own experience and version of this. So I really believe that people knowing what's going on with, you know, the thing that they back and the thing that they care about and the thing that they believe they know what's going on with, you know, I wish that people did know, but it's just like, it's like I've told so many people now, and it just never went anywhere, and I'm at the point now where I'm like, I've got a really cool life, and I'm just gonna keep doing that.
Additionally, after Musical Antihero's video aired, Anonymous Source 3 offered several other statements in email. I had a fairly threatening text from Don, which caused me to block him on text and Facebook Messenger. I assumed he threatened to sue you. I'm sorry to hear you were attacked by gamers online. I have no idea why they would go after you, honestly, especially on a game that is notably late. I'm not sure who is up in arms over it. I know Will O'Neill, another game dev, has pointed it out several times on Twitter. I greatly appreciate you altering my voice, as I really did want to stay anonymous. However, it's also super clear to me how Don worked out I was involved. My cadence and word choices are very distinct, and of course, the intel I have is really a lot that only I know, such as the finances between Imagos and various entities. I cringed a little at hearing myself say how Don yelled at me every day. Thank you for keeping me anonymous. That is critical to me, as Don can blow up at me pretty bad, even for saying nothing. Here's an email interview from Anonymous Source 4. I had a non-disclosure agreement, although those contracts expired after the first year I worked with them. I never got another contract after that first year. Originally, we had an agreement to give me a cut of merchandise and characters I designed for him, t-shirts and posters, and although he sold a bit, I never saw anything from that. Not that I care though, it wasn't much, and I'm moving on. As far as paychecks, I took a month off where I felt tension with playism because I was worried about working for an entire month for no pay, so I took on freelance work instead. I think I went about 2 to 3 months without a paycheck. It was pretty brutal. I racked up a bit of debt due to that. I can't remember the last month I got paid, but it was right before payments for everyone ended. Not every drop of funding was used for production. I believe most of it was spent on employees working on Star Mazer, but some of it went into promotional materials despite my frustrations such as Brick's cosplay and gun replica, or guest musicians, or conventions to promote. Not to mention we were paying the writers, director, musician, and producers a yearly salary, and this project needed to put all of its money into very simple iterations of the game and just basic art until we could expand. But we were making experimental game engines, a second side game, and holiday game art, Halloween event for DSP, as well as time spent on the Star Mazer TV show. The priorities were mismanaged, and thus so was the money. I'm sure there was extra expenditures that didn't need to happen in addition, but that wasn't the bulk of the problem. Don isn't a villain. He tried his best at being friends with his employees, but he wasn't that good at personal relationships, and it got real messy. The people surrounding him often didn't challenge him enough, allowing him to feel like he could be overtly aggressive, so I placed partial blame on them as well. I butted heads with him many times, to his frustration, because I like to challenge decisions I don't agree with, and although he made lots of decisions I didn't agree with in my case, it never got personal. So despite the fact that I don't like how he ran the project, I wouldn't simplify him as aggressive or duplicitous. Here is the situation, as it stands, as I see it. Musical Antihero conducted a lot of research into the matter and found people who were willing to talk, off record. All of their stories are relatively similar, and are also somewhat similar to Alex Maurer's. They all describe Don Thacker in an abusive light, and all mention that Don routinely failed to pay his employees. Using this information, Musical Antihero made his 20-minute video discussing his findings, upon which he was bullied and harassed by Leonard French's community. Not Leonard French himself, but the members of his Discord, as well as Don Thacker's community, and other anonymous people who have a general interest in seeing Alex Maurer eat shit. Due to this, Musical Antihero decided to take the video down and withdraw himself from the internet. From what I can gather, this is not a first for Don Thacker, who does not seem to be above threatening legal action or blowing up at people irrationally, as evidenced by the multiple employee interviews, his treatment of my anonymous investigator friend, and ultimately his behavior towards his ex-girlfriend, whom he unfortunately recognized as being one of the anonymous individuals, and stated just as much in Discord. Well, guess what? I'm not Musical Antihero. My video, this video, won't be coming down, and if anybody attempts to force it down, I will do whatever I can to keep it up. You may feel free to harass me all you want about it. I do understand where Musical Antihero is coming from, though. During the height of Gamergate, a cease and desist letter from Phil Fish caused us to temporarily remove the video Bigger Fish to Fry, even as it went viral. In retrospect, it was one of the biggest mistakes of my YouTube career, and a personal moment of cowardice on my part, and I will not be repeating it. I stand by every single bit of evidence I have presented in this video. It is my opinion that, although Alex Maurer is obviously an awful person, that doesn't mean that Don Thacker is automatically a good person for opposing her. This is not a case of evil SJW Alex going after poor indie dev Don. It's entirely possible, even likely, that both people involved in this case are shitheels. It's also entirely possible that Alex may act like a complete moron and also still be owed money from Don, who is unjustly withholding it. My personal dealings with Alex, as well as these testimonies from Don's co-workers, have led me to believe that Alex and Don are cut from the same cloth, though there is one significant difference between them. When Alex replies to anything, it's usually with nonsensical profanity. To contrast, how did Don Thacker reply to Musical Antihero's video?
That's another thing, man.
Some speculation we're not even going to mention.
I want to just say
Leslie Barbara Streisand.
I'm just a guy. I'm just trying to make some stuff.
You're just a guy. Just a regular guy.
I don't have a.
Wants to make a game.
Or like a super plan. Honestly, I think that what you want to accuse me of something. Accuse me of being like the world's worst business person. I didn't have contracts the way they were supposed to be. I just thought we were gonna make some. Friends and I were gonna make a game. It was gonna be great.
Yeah.
I know that Musical Antihero video came out. I saw half of that just long enough to realize that was weird.
You don't need to call any more attention to that.
Good, because that was weird, man. That was some baffling stuff. It's just like I guess my question to you, the internet audience, is why can't it be that I fucked up and made some terrible business decisions in contracting my friends to do some stuff, or in not contracting some of them in some cases, and was shit at my job when it came to taking care of everybody's interests. That seems, I admit that 1,000. I admit that my artists were under a lot of pressure because I needed to get a lot of art done really fast. And I was saying, guys, do this, do that. I mean, I get all that. Yeah, that's not evil, man. That's me trying to make a video game.
Well, that sounds very innocent, doesn't it? Golly gee, I don't know why people are looking into me, I just don't get it. I'm totally cool, guys. I don't know what's going on here. Well, let's give the devil his due.
My question to you, the internet audience, is why can't it be that I fucked up?
Let's do that. Let's assume the absolute best of you. That it was all just innocent errors on your part, that there's nothing malicious or duplicitous, that you just made mistakes making a game with your friends, like you said on Discord, and there's no big conspiracy. Let's give you the complete benefit of the doubt and work off that premise. So, where's the money? Where's the money, Don? You know, the $400,000? Why didn't people get paid, and when do you plan to pay them? I mean, I'm giving you the benefit of the doubt here. It was all just a big mistake, right? When do you plan to rectify that mistake? With the people you owe for services rendered. If you are just a good guy who has made mistakes, as you claim, then shouldn't your first priority be fixing those mistakes? And not obfuscating them with Alex's own misdeeds? If you're just a good guy who's made mistakes, why are 4 independent, separate people only willing to talk about you off the record? Out of fear of reprisal? And why are their stories of your misdeeds over a long period of time so similar? If you're just a good guy who's made mistakes, why did you threaten my investigator friend with legal action when he began speaking to your former employees? If you're just a good guy who's made mistakes, then maybe you should answer your own question here. Why did your ex feel the need to have her voice censored? And why did you blow up her phone when you figured out it was her? If you're just a good guy who's made mistakes, why did you try to cover up the majority of your wrongdoings by saying it's the industry standard, when you and I and everyone else knows full well that the industry standard is absolute shit right now, and that following it does not automatically make you a good person? I mean, if you see this video, and you are the good guy that you claim to be, I assume that you're going to reply with apologies and explanations, and calls to your community not to harass me, instead of irrational tirades and threats of legal action against me. Right? I don't blame Leonard French for any of this. He's an attorney, hired to represent his client, and his client is entitled to legal representation. But I do blame Don Thacker for his actions. If he were truly the person he publicly presents himself as,
I'm just a guy.
He would not be doing what he's doing right now, or failing to do what he should be doing. And I also blame a lot of the YouTubers who actively tried to push the narrative that because Alex was acting inappropriately, Don must, by default, be in the right, without ever actually investigating the truth of the matter. You know who you are, and we all expect better from you. Well, it's been a long day, guys. Let me just click over to the Pirate Bay here. Oh, Dan. Did you want me to pay for a copy of your game? I see. Well, I understand. I am completely willing to pay for Star Mazer DSP, dude. Just as soon as you are willing to pay for it.
We've decided to set up an initiative. I came up with this initiative a couple days ago. Haven't run it by Leonard yet, but I'm sure he'll either shoot it down or modify it. Here's my initiative. It's called the Imagos Creators Initiative. If you are a content creator, a YouTuber, an artist who's worked on remixes or extensions of our stuff, anything that has anything to do with Imagos, if you've been part of that in the past or are part of it now, I'd like you to contact me directly. Even if this means you're a YouTuber who has posted videos that got taken down or wants to post videos and is worried. And what we'll do, what I want to do, of course, I have to run this by my lawyer, of course, but my plan is to set up a contract, a sort of informal business relationship, or I guess a formal business relationship, but informal in the case of no stock being passed or no money being passed, whatever. But we can become partners. I'd like to be partners with you. I think that would afford you all of our support, our social support, our friendship. That's great. And ultimately, any legally binding contract that potentially can stop people from attacking people who are associated with us by business. Let's become business partners, all of us.
John is a very personal matter. He's not an okay person in my life, and I've gone non-contact with him. But I did want you to have the information to know, if nothing else, if people are coming up to you and saying that they're not paid, they are absolutely not paid. Like, trust them. Don't trust anything Don says